Pacer Nation, what's going on? Welcome back to your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Gold, and I'm joined today by Michael Facci. You know, Facci, coming off a great win against the Cavaliers, the Hornets were in town, thinking the Pacers are going to get a winning streak going, and a dagger to the chest, 125, 124 loss, had the ball with 16 seconds left on the clock, didn't even get a shot off. Initial reactions to that game.
The highs and lows of sports, man, just like you mentioned, coming off that Cleveland win, I mean, it could not be riding any higher. Then after that loss to Charlotte, it was really disappointing because the Pacers had opportunities. I mean, it was a really, really good game, but this was a game that the Pacers had an unbelievable third quarter, which then you think they have it, then they fall behind, to then it's just you couldn't count them out. They had countless chances, but uncharacteristic turnovers from Tyrese Halliburton, who was absolutely brilliant. Have to throw that in there. Despite the turnovers that happened, it's like Tyrese played an unbelievable game. There was a missed free throw from Buddy Hield that could have tied it. There was just bad play overall. This was a game that got away from the Pacers, and I don't want to say they overlooked the Hornets because they were on a back-to-back, but just a disappointing loss overall.
Yeah, and I think one thing to keep in mind, too, is Charlotte had lost 3 games in a row, and they were in Indiana practicing on Friday. I think they maybe got in Thursday and then spent the night, practice Friday, and then they were there for Saturday's game. So they were there for a couple of nights and were able to kind of get themselves situated and ready for this game. So, Rick Carlisle alluded to that. He said, this is going to be a tough game. Charlotte's a good team, and I think people kind of overlook Charlotte just because they don't have any star players on their roster. Yeah, LaMelo Ball was a former All-Star. They've got Brandon Miller, the second overall pick, but at Charlotte, they're a smaller market, and I think nobody had real expectations for this team heading into the season. So, yeah, they're an interesting group. I will say that. They've got some length on them. They've got some veteran experience with a Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier, but it was one of those games, like you said, it was just uncharacteristic of the Pacers. Like, you got to go back to that second quarter when nothing was working for the Pacers. They had 13 points on made baskets in that quarter, and 6 came from the free throw line. So they had 19 points that quarter, which is a low-scoring quarter for the Pacers, but they were only able to get 1 3 in that quarter and then 5 2-point field goals. So I thought that really did kind of shift things. They were only down by 8 going into the half, and I thought, okay, maybe they can weather this storm. And then Tyrese comes out, like you said, and drops 25 points and has 6 assists in the third quarter, getting his total up to 20 or 38 points for the night at this point. And it felt like the Pacers were going to ride this one out into the sunset after Tyrese just had a magnificent game. I kept waiting for Tyrese to come back in the fourth and drop a career high. But I thought Charlotte did a really good job of denying him the basketball, forcing the ball out of his hands and making other guys beat them. And that's ultimately what happened. Is it just you take away Tyrese, and who is this team?
No, it's a fantastic point. I mean, I know you went through a little bit of it. The Pacers shot 33.3% in the first half.
Yeah.
I mean, it was abysmal. It was really rough. And then when you mentioned it before, that third quarter, to put things in perspective, they dropped 50 points. Alex, they do it on 81% shooting. They went 17 of 21 from the field, 12 of 15 from 3, which tied an NBA record for three-pointers in a quarter. Halliburton had 6 made threes in that third quarter alone. Everything was going the right way. But yeah, like you mentioned, Halliburton ends up finishing the game with just 5 points in the fourth quarter. And you can't really knock him because, look, he finished the game with 43 and 12. He became the first Pacer to ever drop 40 and 10 assists in franchise history. So it was an awesome performance, but Charlotte stepped up when it mattered most. And that's the thing for the Pacers is they really didn't bring their A game in that fourth quarter. Charlotte outscores them by 5. Pacers let up 33 points in that fourth quarter. Honestly, Mark Williams was really big in this game. And I want to tell you a big part of the difference in this game because the Pacers, like we mentioned, really had it going on from three-point land. They actually outscored Charlotte by 42 points from 3. But they were heavily outscored in the paint, 74-40. So it's like these teams are playing 2 totally different styles of basketball. And in the end, Charlotte squeaks one out for Halliburton. Actually, I think a big part that we could touch on is he finished the game with 3 turnovers, which is not a lot at all. If anyone has 3 turnovers, okay, yeah, whatever. He had 12 assists. But it was so uncharacteristic that 2 of the 3 turnovers came in pivotal spots, one kind of rushing an inbound pass that felt like it was a little bit low at Miles Turner's legs. And then obviously to close out the game, the one-on-one that's been featured everywhere between LaMelo Ball and Tyrese Halliburton. Alex, I thought you did a great breakdown on Twitter. If you want to get into some of the specifics on that last possession.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, there's 15 seconds left on the shot clock or on the game clock, and Tyrese comes down the court, and it's like he's waving for a pick. And if you were, I was at the game, so I was able to see it from the full court vantage point, and it looked like the guys were kind of confused on who was going to come set the screen and what they wanted to do. I think they were looking at maybe Bruce Brown setting the screen, but Brandon Miller was kind of playing off. And one thing that I asked Coach Carlisle in the post-game press conference was how did Charlotte end up adjusting defensively against Tyrese after that big third quarter? And he said, well, they trapped him every time he came across half court. So this time Charlotte decides not to trap him. And I think had they done some kind of pick and roll thing with Turner, with Bruce Brown, with whoever, that Charlotte was going to trap Tyrese and get the ball out of his hands. So I think that's why the person did not come up and set the screen, was because they wanted Tyrese to create on his own, which we've seen him do that time and time again. However, on this play, he tries to cross over LaMelo Ball. And on the first initial crossover, you can tell it's very close. You got to watch it in slow motion. As he's crossing over, the ball does hit the front of his left leg. Now, at the same time, like right after that, you can see LaMelo did make some contact with Tyrese's arm. So there definitely could have been a foul called there if they really were going to be, tic-tacky officiating-wise, but they didn't. So this just lodged the ball from Tyrese's hands, and then he had to recover to try to get it. And by the time he tried to recover, LaMelo's long wingspan was able to knock the ball away as time expired. So I thought Tyrese waited a little bit too long to get into that shot. I think there was about 4 seconds left when he first started to make that move. Mm-hmm. And with 15 seconds left and you're down by 1, I think you got to start attacking around the 8-second point. That way, if you do miss, you give yourself a chance to maybe get an offensive rebound or to foul, only down by 1, call timeout and advance the basketball. Maybe you try to set up a play to get a 3 to tie the game if for some reason Charlotte goes down and makes 2 for 2. So I just thought, unfortunately, it was bad game management. And Rick Carlisle and Tyrese both said there was talk before this play happened to not call a timeout. We've seen Rick do this previously with the Pacers, and we've seen Tyrese have big moments where there has been no timeout called. If you go back and look at what he did against Chicago last year on the road and Miami on the road. So it's not like this is unfamiliar territory for Tyrese to be in these situations. He just happened not to be on the successful side of things for this game. And I think we always get caught up in like, oh, man, he didn't have a game winner, so he's not an all-NBA player. Like, all-NBA players don't always make the right play, and sometimes they just are on the bad end of the way the outcome ends up happening. So overall, I would say relax. It's game 6. It's a tough break, but learn from it and grow from it, because we know Tyrese loves to play basketball, and we know that he loves to be he's more of a perfectionist with his game. This is not going to settle well with Tyrese. I think he's going to come out in one of the next games and really prove, okay, I've got to get things back on track.
I tweeted it out, and obviously some people who are just fresh off of the loss were like, you got to stop defending this team, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing. Tyrese Halliburton worked so hard that I felt that in the unfortunate instance of him having that turnover with the game on, he really takes this seriously to be the leader on this team. Mm-hmm. To get stripped but also have 2 turnovers, you could see the facial expression. After that first turnover, the one that was a little bit low of a pass to Miles Turner, it felt like Halliburton, it looked like he was sick on the sideline to be like, that's my bad. Like, I rushed that, whatever. He knew that. Then when he got stripped by LaMelo, he immediately left the court, and you could just tell that one hurt. And I really do think, and this is not just saying that Tyrese is going to come out of this situation a better player who is now more aware when the game matters more. Most because I just feel that he takes it that seriously. Whatever it is that he's working on, he gets better at it. And I just think that in this instance, hey, guys, I know it's a loss now, but eventually this will be something that turns into him making an even better play down the line. Had an unbelievable game. You don't become the first Pacer to ever drop 40 and 10 plus assists and then say Tyrese lost us the game. We're not even in that game unless he goes absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
So Tyrese carried us. We saw him hit countless shots over the past week. Not every time in crunch time are we going to be able to hit that game-winning shot. In this instance, we had numerous opportunities. I mean, I want to give a quick shout out before to Buddy Hield. Although he missed that free throw that would have tied it up on that N1, ends up getting a strip to the point where it gives the Pacers another chance.
Yeah.
There was so many different things here and there, but in the end, there was a couple calls. You don't want to blame it on a ref. You don't want to blame it on one play. The bottom line is the Pacers didn't get it done against Charlotte.
Yeah, and I think you can go back to under the 3-minute mark when Aaron Nesmith went 1 of 2 on the free
I
throw
wanted
line.
to. I didn't want to rant too long, but please take it from here, Alex, because I'm still not over that call.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here, but Aaron Nesmith ended up getting fouled, and he went 1 of 2 from the free throw line in the fourth quarter, excuse me. And I think that made it like 123 to, I can't remember, it was 121 to 120, something like that. I can't remember, but he had a chance to tie it up. It was 121 to 119 when he got fouled. He went 1 of 2, ended up making it. I might be wrong on the score there, but regardless, he had a chance to tie it up at one point. I can't remember if it was 121 or 123. Then Buddy Hield, like you said, had a play where he got the layup. Charlotte challenged it. They failed on the challenge because it was a blocking foul, and then Buddy Hield missed the free throw. So they had 2 missed free throws there. But if you go back before the 2-minute mark, probably around like the 3 to 4-minute mark, Brandon Miller bull rushes,
like
lowers his shoulder,
block. It was ridiculous,
through Aaron Nesmith, trying to basically stay with Tyrese Halliburton. The officials go and review it, and they come back and not only say that it was a common foul, he was making a basketball play. They also give Aaron Nesmith a technical foul for reacting and retaliating to a certain degree for that. Now, look, we asked Rick Carlisle in the postgame press conference about that, and he said, categorically, I didn't agree with their reasoning for why they gave him a technical foul. He said, but, I'm not going to lose $50,000 on this because it's not worth it. I totally understand him not wanting to knock the officiating because, look, officiating aside, we should have won this game. But that's 3 critical moments right there. That's 3 critical points right there. Look, if they don't call the technical on Aaron Nesmith and they call a flagrant foul on Brandon Miller, that's a 3-point swing. Yeah. In a close game, when you lose by 1 point, that is very impactful. So in the moment, I'm like, okay, you got to move on. But when you look at it in retrospect, yeah, that's a big miss by the NBA, and I don't think that they're going to go back and say they made the wrong call. It wasn't part of the last 2-minute report.
2-minute review, yeah.
So, it's one of those things you got to deal with it. There's bad calls both ways all the time in the NBA. I thought against the Cavaliers, there were some travels the Pacers got away with, and maybe it was just the blue court was harder for the officials to see it on. But overall, I just felt like this game against Charlotte, there was some bad officiating in favor of the Hornets getting more of the advantage. But look, Charlotte, 23 of 23 from the free throw line. Your Pacers just 12 of 16. The Pacers missed some clutch free throws that would have changed this game, and Charlotte didn't miss any. So it's a game of inches sometimes, like they talk about in football. In basketball, it's a game of possessions, and just one turnover, one simple possession goes a different way. Pacers win this game, and that's what makes it so frustrating is just the fashion in which they lost. Not that they lost to Charlotte, but in the fashion they lost to them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of great points there. I just, to this day, I've never seen anything like, Nesmith walking away with a technical and what could have been a flagrant foul. Just like you talked about. My wife was sitting next to me. She's like, explain to me. I don't understand. I was like, babe, I don't understand. I've never seen anything like this before. And yeah, you don't want to blame it on one call, but the fact that you pointed out that Charlotte was a perfect 23 of 23 for the free throw line just shows this margin of error. It's so small in the NBA. And you know what? The Pacers had games against Chicago that they should have won. games against Charlotte that they should have won.
Mhm.
It shows that this team on any night, maybe to an extent, could beat anyone, and maybe not the Bostons of the world. But I think with Tyrese Halliburton, you have a chance any night, and I think that this was a chance that they let slip away against Charlotte. I think that the Pacers, they live and die by the three in this game. It worked out, but how many times are they going to shoot 22 of 45 from three?
Yeah.
That is not something that you can count on. I mean, that's it's historic shooting right there. So this is frustrating because I know, just on a side note, LaMelo Ball and Tyrese Halliburton have been compared. They're from the same draft class. That's something that we've seen a lot on on Twitter. And from a matchup standpoint, look, Halliburton definitely got the better of LaMelo when it
Yeah.
mattered most. Unfortunately, LaMelo got Halliburton, and I think that while we shouldn't think of Charlotte beneath us, we do. We do feel that the Pacers are a better team than the Charlotte Hornets. And unfortunately, that did not show over the weekend. And all we can do is get ready for San Antonio.
Yeah, it's an 82 game season. You can't dwell on one game and be like, oh, well, if we would have won this. Well, here's the thing. You're going to win games you probably shouldn't have. Beating Cleveland
That
twice
will
was not
definitely
something that
happen.
anybody expected happening. So the fact that
Twice.
yeah, like I said, beat them twice.
Yeah.
So when
Oh,
you
yeah.
beat Cleveland twice, that's pretty good because they're a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference last year. So you got to figure out the balance of the good and the bad and when to react and when to overreact. And I will say this. I'm curious your thoughts as we kind of close this out.
Yeah.
Tyrese Halliburton really took over in that third quarter, and we needed
Oh,
that
yeah.
from him, like you said. We needed it from him. Nobody else was really going.
No one.
Does Tyrese need to start being more assertive in the first half to really establish himself and focus more on being a score-first point guard and not so much of a pass-first point guard that turns on the scoring when he needs to?
I hear you, and it would be beneficial, but I feel like this is who he is. He is a pass first, get your teammates going, get them in a rhythm, and have that confidence for them. That's always who he's been. Dustin DePierre talked about when he was on here about his article about how Halliburton always took pride getting his teammates going early,
Yeah.
and I think that that's just kind of who he is. But we know he's very capable of dropping 30 to 40 points if he really wants to and really, is being aggressive out there. I don't think he's going to turn into being this overly aggressive player, but I think he can turn it up a notch because we have seen Halliburton in first halves so far at 5, 10 points, anything like that. But sometimes his Pacers team, yeah, we might need him to turn it on a little bit earlier because 25 of the 43 came in that third quarter. That's that's a lot for one quarter.
Yeah, and I'll just say this. I think he needs to be more assertive, in my personal opinion, only because you talked about it. Like, there's not a guy right now that's really separated himself from the pack as the number 2 option for this team.
Now,
It's one night it's Miles Turner, one night it's Aaron Nesmith, one night it's Bruce Brown.
Bruce Brown, yeah.
Yeah, who is going to separate themselves as the number 2 option? Look, we all hoped it would be Ben Mathurin, but right now, Ben Mathurin's in a bit of a slump, and it feels like he's still trying to figure out where he belongs. And I want to talk about him a little
So
bit
do I.
later in the season. I don't want to jump into too many hot takes right now as we're just
Neither do
6
I.
games in. But I do think it's something to monitor to see how he evolves in his role or if he doesn't evolve and what ways they could change it. Now, I will say this. I don't know if you read the article yet I put out or not, but I mentioned that maybe running Ben Mathurin with the bench unit and having him kind of be the first sub out of the game, putting Buddy in for him, and then letting Ben kind of run with the second unit. I think that could help for 2 reasons. One, I think that it would help Ben get back more in the role he had last year going up against second unit talent and be more of a focal point offensively where Tyrese can be the focal point offensively for the first unit. And then I also think it allows Buddy more time to play with Tyrese, where that's where his bread and butter is. Like, he is a beneficiary of Tyrese's play and they have great synergy together. So I think if you can get more minutes with Buddy and Ty and have Ben kind of start, reward him for being, rookie, all rookie first team last year and like a promising piece of your future, but giving him more responsibility to kind of lead the second unit with Nimhard, someone he played a lot with last year, Nesmith, Jalen, And Buddy, I think that could be something to keep an eye on moving forward as they try to tinker with rotations to find the perfect mix. Because right now, I haven't loved the bench unit with Bruce Brown. I don't feel like there's enough offensive creation. And
No.
I feel like with Ben out there, that would allow him to do more with the ball in his hands and not just be kind of trying to figure out where he can get his looks at with the starting five.
Yeah, it feels like he's being lost in the shuffle a little bit as that, we'll call him the fourth starter. I feel like OB is most definitely the fifth.
Yeah.
But for right now, for Mathurin, it's just, if I told you that, hey, this early in the year, he'd be averaging 11.2 points per game and sub 40% shooting, I mean, you'd think, wow, we got to do something about that.
Yeah.
Because expectations were high. And there are some things that he's done well, specifically distributing the rock. I mean, he's already had 3 games of 5 assists. That's more than he had all of last year. But we don't need one of our best scorers to be another distributor. So we needed him to kind of tiptoe that line to be like a little bit more of looking for teammates, but also not losing that aggressive hunger. And in 2 of the last 3 games, he's had 7 or less shots. So, I mean, that's that. I mean, it's a 7 shots, and 11 shots.
Yeah.
7 shots is not enough for Benedict Mathurin. I understand against Boston that was a lost game, but 7 shots.
He should have been shooting a lot more in that Boston game without Tyrese.
Absolutely. I mean, in that game, you would think that, hey, look, go out there and be aggressive. He played 15 minutes, got up 7 shots. I feel like we got to find a way for him to be able to, with confidence, go out there and be aggressive. Because Alex, when he's not aggressive, he's not getting to the free throw line. And in his last 3 games, he has 5 free throw attempts. He's 2 of 5 from the free throw line in that span. I just feel like we got to get him in a rhythm. And I do think that maybe starting, we don't want to say could be very, very important to him, but I do think that he could be more important to this team, potentially off the bench. But we don't want to overreact. It's 6 games in, but we know this is a very special talent that we're dealing with, that we need to be able to get him to reach his full potential.
I don't really think he needs to go to the bench yet. I think that it's way
Not
too
yet.
early for that. That's why I said maybe tinker with the adjustments or the rotations, adjust the rotations. That way he's getting quality time with the ball in his hands, but in a different role. He's still getting the glory, whatever you want to call it. I'm trying to think of the right word here. He's still getting the what am I trying to say here? I can't think of
recognition of being in the starting lineup. I don't know.
Yes, something like that. He's still getting praise for being a starter. He's still getting all the good stuff that comes with being a starter and getting introduced with the starting lineup and feeling important, right? And you're making him feel like he's progressing in his development, but you're also kind of tinkering with what he does still and not overthinking it too much, because I think sometimes right now Ben is really overthinking it as a player. He's trying to grow as a passer, and I think we talked about it in the Cavs game recap where he could have had a layup on one of those plays, but he ends up trying to throw it to Miles and the ball went out of bounds, and it's like, what are you doing? That's one of those plays where you have to just take that shot, and I think
he's thinking about it too much.
He's not playing free, and that's what he did last year. He came in, you're our scorer off the bench, do what's best for our team. Now it's like, okay, guard one of the better players on their team every time. Be a facilitator, score when it's the right time. Wait for Tyrese to set you up. Now it's just totally different. So as he's adjusting, I think the coaching staff needs to maybe find a different rotation that allows him some more opportunities to be on ball, focal point of the offense, and not so stuck trying to figure out, oh, am I going to be in the corner? What's Ty doing this possession? They got to figure out their chemistry together. But while they're trying to figure that out, allow him opportunities to not always be on the court with Tyrese at the same time.
It's just funny because the Pacers are 3-3, and there's a scenario where maybe you could say 5-1 or 4-2. They could have been whatever. That's good. That's good for a team that just come off winning 35 games. So
yeah,
things are not broken. Like before I even knew it, I was just like, oh well, maybe eventually he comes off the bench. It's like, no, look, let's pump the brakes. No, doesn't need to come off the bench. I think that'd probably be the worst thing that could happen right now in a season to say that we're winning some games and now we're going to move him to the bench. I think that would not be good. But for now, I think just the only thing we could really do is give him time, staggers minutes with some different players. This is when you do that experimenting because there is still near 75 games left on the season. It's like there's 76 games left. It's like, guys are going to get into a rhythm. Right now, he's not in a rhythm. And you know what? The Pacers honestly haven't suffered from it. Could they have used him more against Charlotte? Absolutely. Could they have used him, a bit more against Chicago? Yeah, he had 15 points, was on 4 of 11 shooting. So there are opportunities there where if he is more aggressive, the team will benefit. But for right now, it's not like this is a 1-5 Pacers team that we're talking about by any means. This is a 500 team that still needs to learn how to play with each other. Some nights it's looked great. Some nights it's been a little bit underwhelming or, rather disappointing. However you want to chalk it up to say games that you didn't live up to your potential. But Mathurin is someone that, we do expect more because he is that talented. But I do feel confident that he will give us more because you can make an argument right now. It's like if I told you he was averaging 11 points per game, but the Pacers were a 500 team, you'd be like, all right, you know what? It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I would say assessment-wise, you need to wait till about 25% of the regular season games have been played before you're having any hot takes. So that's where I'm at right now. We're 6 games in. Pump the brakes if you're upset. Like you said, we could be 5-1 based on how things played out against Chicago and Charlotte. Obviously Boston's the one outlier where you're going to lose that game.
Yeah. No,
but the Pacers have really, if they haven't won, they've been in every game they've lost besides the Boston game. So you feel good about that. You feel like this team's heading in the right direction, and don't hit the panic button yet. Just relax. Just relax. I think that's the best way to kind of sum up this podcast recap of a tough 125-124 loss to the Charlotte Hornets, a team, like you said, that we view as worse than us.
Yeah, we do.
I think league-wide, everybody else does too. So we are not being homers by saying this, but you got to feel for Charlotte fans because I'm sure they feel very much like we do as Pacer fans, feeling like we get kind of discounted. We get little credit. We don't get as much attention as we necessarily need. And I don't care about the LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton stuff. Like, I don't care if LaMelo Ball has one great defensive play in the game. If Tyrese Halliburton scores 43 points to whatever he had, come on. We might be talking about one play, but we're talking about an entire game from Tyrese Halliburton. So I'm not worried about that. But Facci, nothing else for me to say on this game. Just a tough loss. Bounce back. Spurs on Monday.
The only thing I would say, Spurs on Monday. But look, we're going to move on from here. Because here's the thing. Here's the difference. This podcast would be 110% different if we just finish out that game and we win. We would be riding so high right now, saying like, oh my God, warn everyone in the East. We're coming. But you know what?
I don't know if I'd be doing
that. I would be doing it. But here's the thing. We didn't win. So you know what? There's going to be moments, like you mentioned earlier in the episode, where we beat a team that we did not expect to beat. There will be times that we lose to a team that we did expect to beat. That's what comes with, just playing the right basketball at the right time. Right now, we're still trying to figure that out. Good news, there's a lot of time left. Bring on the Spurs. I'm excited about it. Wembanyama doing some special things. Well, you know what? Hey, the Pacers, anytime they play a guy like Victor, there's going to be even more people watching them than normal. So bring the eyes on us. Let's get a win. And, hey, let's move on to above 500.
I love it, Facci. Go ahead and tell the people now where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at PacersPod STP. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPod STP. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Yeah, you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Setting the Pace, a Pacers podcast, where you can find all of our post-game recap videos on there. We're giving you 2 episodes on Sunday night for the weekend games because we could not record after the Cavaliers win and the Hornets loss. So those will be recorded on Sundays for those Friday, Saturday games moving forward. But with that being said, Facci, if you're ready to get back over 500 and get a victory over the San Antonio Spurs, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!